Brit. She was banished for being a weak Omega until the Alpha King claimed his mate. The winds of winter cut through the stone streets of Altheria, carrying with them the biting whispers of judgment and failure. Villagers hurried home, drawing cloaks tight around their shoulders. But their eyes could not hide the pity, the scorn, the unspoken accusation that followed Leora wherever she went. Leora, an Omega of the Northern Lands, moved silently along the cobblestone path. Inspiration. Her small frame, draped in the worn green cloak of her village, seemed almost swallowed by the gray towers of the city. Her heart was heavy, weighed down not by the chill, but by the suffocating sense of inadequacy that had haunted her for as long as she could remember. Inspiration. She had always been different, weaker than the other Omegas, unable to fend off threats or endure the harsh tests of strength her village expected. Yet she had tried, more than anyone could see. Inspiration. Yet today, that effort meant nothing. The roar of the council's verdict still echoed in her mind. Inspiration. She is weak, the eldest Alpha had declared. She cannot protect herself, nor can she protect her people. Inspiration.
She is unworthy of our lands. The words were final, cutting like the edge of a sword across her spirit.
Inspiration. Banished. That single word carried with it exile, disgrace, and the cruel reality that she would never return to the life she had known. Barrage. She passed the gates one last time, her hands trembling. Beyond the walls stretched the forest, wild and untamed, full of creatures both mundane and magical. It was said that few who wandered there ever returned, and yet that was all she had now. The snow beneath her boots was soft but sharp, sinking and gripping like a warning. She took a deep breath, trying to summon courage. But her lungs only drew in the cold, bitter air.
Night fell quickly in these northern reaches.
The pale moon cast silver shadows between the trees, and the forest seemed alive with whispers. Leora's senses, ever delicate, picked up every rustle of leaves, every distant cry of an animal. Her magic, a fragile gift she had never fully understood, stirred nervously within her. She had always feared it, fearing it would betray her in the moments that mattered most. Now it hummed quietly, an uncertain echo of power she could barely control. The first night alone was the hardest. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and fatigue weighed her eyelids down. She tried to make a fire, fumbling with flint and dry wood, and when the sparks finally caught, she huddled close, watching the flames dance. They seemed alive, moving with a grace she envied. Her thoughts turned to her village, to the faces she would never see again. She tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway, falling like tiny icicles upon the snow. And then she heard it, a shadow among the trees. At first she thought it was only the wind, but the movements were deliberate, purposeful.
Leora's heart leapt into her throat.
She tried to push herself back against the fire, to make herself as small and invisible as possible, but the figure emerged anyway. He was massive, taller than any alpha she had ever seen, his form wrapped in dark furs that seemed to absorb the moonlight. His eyes glowed faintly, a piercing gold that felt as though it could see straight into her soul. Leora froze, fear and awe entwining so tightly she could hardly breathe. "You should not be here!" The voice rumbled, deep and commanding, yet with an undercurrent of curiosity. I am banished, she whispered, her voice trembling. I am not supposed to. She stopped, words failing her, for the presence before her was overwhelming.
I know who you are, he said, stepping closer. The ground seemed to tremble beneath his boots, yet he moved with a grace that belied his size.
The council is mistaken. Weak?
That is not what I see.
Leora's heart raced.
Inspiration. Who was he? Why did he know her? Inspiration. And why did his words feel like both a promise and a warning? I am nothing, she admitted, her voice breaking. Inspiration. I am small. I cannot protect myself. I cannot protect anyone. He knelt, bringing his face closer to hers, and for a moment the forest fell silent.
You are more than you know, he said. I see strength in you, the kind that hides behind fear.
I have watched the land suffer, and I have seen your courage, faint as it may be. That courage matters.
Leora's tears came again, not entirely from fear this time. The intensity of his gaze, the conviction in his voice, shook something deep within her. Inspiration. Yet doubt remained. You are the Alpha King, she said softly, recognizing him from the legends whispered in hushed tones. Why would you care for me? They smiled faintly, but it was not warm. It was calculated, like the edge of a blade held just close enough to be seen. Because you are mine, he said. Not in the way the council would command, but in a way that matters. You have a place in this world, Leora, whether you believe it or not. You are my Omega. You will awaken the strength that was always inside you. The words were like fire and ice all at once. Leora wanted to run, to escape into the shadows where she could hide from the impossible reality of his presence. And yet, part of her wanted to stay, to understand, to believe. Her life had been nothing but rejection and failure. Could it be possible that someone so powerful could see her, truly see her, for more than her weakness? I do not know how, she whispered. Inspiration. I have never been strong. Strength is not only measured in battle, he said, his voice lowering, resonating with authority. It is measured in survival, in courage, in the heart's ability to endure. Inspiration. You have survived. You have endured. Inspiration. That is strength. The wind shifted, and a shadow passed over the moon. Leora's magic, which had been quietly trembling in her veins, flared in response. Inspiration. She gasped as a flicker of light danced across her fingertips, illuminating the clearing in spectral glow. The Alpha King's eyes widened slightly, a glint of approval or surprise, or perhaps both, shining in them.
He glances around in despair. Do you see? He asks softly.
You only need to claim it. I am not ready. You will be,
he said with certainty, rising to his full height.
Come with me. Learn. Survive. Become what you were always meant to be. Or remain lost. The choice is yours. But the world will not wait. For a long moment, Leora simply stared at him. First, the cold, the judgment of her village. All of it seemed to fade. Here was a being of power, an Alpha King, speaking to her with such certainty that her doubt wavered. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Finally, with trembling hands, she nodded. I will try. The Alpha King extended his hand and she took it, feeling the warmth and strength in his grasp. It was not comforting, not soft. It was commanding, Beration, and yet it gave her a strange sense of safety, as if the weight of her past could be carried on his shoulders. He did not speak as they walked through the forest, but his presence was enough. Leora felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. Hope, perhaps, or the first flicker of confidence. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with dangers both known and hidden, but, for the first time, she did not feel entirely alone. As the first light of dawn broke over the treetops, casting the forest in gold and shadow, Leora saw the castle on the horizon. Its spires cut into the sky like blades of black ice, formidable and unyielding. She felt a shiver of fear, but also anticipation. This was where her path would change. Desperate, this was where she would be tested, and she knew deep down that there was no turning back. Above them, a crow called from the forest's edge, a harsh cry that echoed like a warning.
Yet the Alpha King did not falter. His grip on her hand tightened slightly, and he spoke in a low, steady voice.
Tomorrow, your trials begin. And when they are done, you will be more than you imagine. Leora looked up at him at the dark silhouette against the rising sun, and felt a spark of something that had been buried deep inside her. Fear, yes. Doubt, yes. But also a sense of destiny. Something ancient. Something that had always belonged to her. And somewhere in the depths of her heart, she realized that the exile, the humiliation, the endless nights of questioning her worth, all of it had led her here. To this moment, to the Alpha King who saw her not for her weakness, but for what she could become. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them, and for the first time in her life, Leora did too. She had fallen, yes, but perhaps, just perhaps, she was on the cusp of rising. And the shadows of the forest whispered secrets she had not yet learned, hinting at powers, trials, and choices that would test every fiber of her being. She did not know it yet, but her exile was only the beginning.
And the Alpha King's claim was the spark that would ignite her destiny.
The castle rose from the cliffs like a monument carved from shadow and stone. Its towers pierced the sky, sharp and imposing, wrapped in clouds that swirled like dark silk. Leora had never seen a structure so vast, so commanding, and as they approached, a shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from the weight of its presence. The Alpha King led her along winding paths and grand gates that seemed more like walls built to contain a storm than to welcome guests. Inside, the halls were colder than the northern forests she had just crossed. Stone arches echoed their footsteps, and flickering torches cast dancing shadows that leapt across walls adorned with tapestries depicting battles and ancient rulers.
Leora kept close to the Alpha King Kale, whose golden eyes remained fixed ahead, unyielding and observant.
He moved with the ease of one accustomed to command, yet there was a faint curiosity in the way he glanced at her from time to time, as though measuring the very essence of her being.
"You will stay in the eastern wing," Kale said, his voice a low rumble.
It is protected and secluded. You need rest.
"I thank you," Leora whispered, her voice barely audible. She hesitated, then added, "I do not know if I am ready for any of this." Kale's gaze softened slightly. Not much, just enough to acknowledge the fear she carried. "Readiness is a journey, not a gift. You will be ready when you have faced the trials." "And you will face them soon." Leora's heart beat faster.
Trials. She had expected exile, perhaps hardship, but trials sounded deliberate, calculated, and unavoidable.
Breath house height. Fear crept up her spine like ice, yet beneath it she felt a strange pull, an undercurrent of something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Hope.
Her room was simple but grand, the kind of space that seemed designed to humble its occupant. High ceilings arched above her, and the windows framed the cliffs and the storm-laden sea beyond.
A fire burned in the hearth, though it did little to warm the chill that lingered in her bones. Leora sank onto the edge of the bed, feeling small against the vastness of her surroundings. Kale lingered at the doorway, silent. For a moment she imagined he would leave, but instead he spoke.
Do not mistake my guidance for mercy. I do not claim you out of kindness. I claim you because you are vital, and because I see what others cannot.
I am weak, Leora murmured.
That is why I was cast out.
That is why you should not have claimed me.
Strength is not always the roar of a sword or the strike of a shield, Kale replied, stepping closer.
It can be quiet, hidden, and still burn brighter than the fiercest fire. You have something inside you, Leora.
Something the world fears because it cannot control it.
I do not know how to control it. Every time I try, it falters.
Kale crouched slightly, meeting her eyes directly. Then you will learn.
And I will guide you. But understand this, fear is part of the path.
Fear and doubt are not your enemies. They are your teachers. You cannot run from them.
You must face them, or they will consume you. Leora swallowed hard.
The weight of his words and of his presence was almost unbearable. Yet she felt a flicker of something deeper, an ember of trust she could not yet name. She did not know if she was ready to face the trials, but she knew somehow that there was no turning back. The next morning, Kale summoned her to the training halls, vast chambers where sunlight rarely touched the cold stone floors. Warriors practiced with swords, shields, and strange glowing weapons, moving with precision and discipline. Leora felt her chest tighten.
She was not a fighter. She had never been a fighter.
And yet, Kale walked beside her with the calm authority of someone who knew the world would bend to him. Your first lesson, he said, is understanding your power.
Not as a tool of strength alone, but as a part of you. Magic is not just for combat. It is for perception, for guidance, for survival. You must learn its language before it learns yours.
E gestured to a small, glowing crystal resting on a pedestal.
This is a conduit, he explained. It responds to intention, emotion, and will.
You will start here. Leora approached cautiously. The crystal pulsed gently as her hand hovered above it.
Her pulse matched its rhythm, quickening and slowing as fear and fascination collided.
She reached out, and the crystal flared with light, startling her.
Focus, Kale said softly, his presence grounding her. Breathe. Let the light flow, do not force it. Control comes from acceptance, not dominance. Her hands shook, but she followed his instructions, letting herself sink into the rhythm of the crystal. Slowly, the light steadied. Leora gasped. She had done it. Not perfectly, but she had done it. Kale studied her closely. Good. This is only the beginning.
You will falter many times. and you will succeed in ways you do not yet understand. Each step will shape you.
At the first time in her life, Leora felt the possibility of transformation. She was still afraid, still uncertain, but the spark inside her was no longer buried.
Brr. It stirred, and it demanded attention. Days passed in a blur of lessons, trials, and quiet observation.
Kale pushed her, but never beyond the point of breaking. He tested her endurance, her intuition, and her ability to perceive the magic around her.
Slowly, she began to recognize patterns in her own abilities. She could sense the flow of energy in the walls, in the air, in the subtle shifts of the room itself. It was delicate, almost imperceptible, but powerful when she acknowledged it. Kale watched her every step, every hesitation, every moment of triumph and failure. There was no cruelty in his guidance, but there was no indulgence either. His presence was constant, a reminder that her mistakes had consequences and her successes had weight. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the stormy cliffs, Leora spoke quietly, almost to herself. Why me? Why claim me when the council refused?
Kale's eyes reflected the lightning over the sea. Because destiny is not decided by the council.
It is decided by those who can see the threads that others cannot. You have a role in the kingdom that no one else can fulfill. And perhaps,
because I have waited for someone who could surprise me.
The words unsettled her. She did not understand their meaning fully, yet she felt the truth in them. Someone had noticed her when the world had turned away. And that knowledge, fragile though it was, kindled a warmth in her chest she had never known. But progress was not without resistance. In the training halls, whispers followed her. Some warriors sneered. Others watched with curiosity tinged with doubt.
The Omega King favors, they said in hushed voices. Why would he waste time on someone so weak? Leora felt the sting of their words, but she also remembered Kale's counsel. Fear and doubt were teachers.
She took a deep breath, recalling the crystal, the flow of magic, the small successes she had achieved. She would prove them wrong, not through strength of arms alone, but through mastery of herself. Weeks passed, and her bond with Kale grew, not through spoken affection, but through shared trials and quiet observation. She began to understand his ways, the precision of his control, the intensity of his gaze, and the rare moments when his voice softened, when his approval shone like sunlight breaking through clouds. One night, as the castle slept, Leora found herself in the library drawn to a tome that had caught her attention. The pages were filled with prophecies and warnings, written in flowing script that spoke of Omegas and Alphas, of power hidden and power awakened. One passage chilled her. The weak shall rise, and in their rise the kingdom shall be remade. But beware, for the fire that awakens can consume as easily as it saves. Could it be her? Could she be the one meant to change the kingdom?
The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure.
She did not hear Kale approach until he was beside her, his shadow stretching across the pages. You read the prophecies, he said softly, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of command.
I think it speaks of me, she admitted, the words trembling in her mouth. Kale's gaze did not waver. It does! And that is why you must learn quickly!
The world outside these walls does not wait. Forces move in shadows, seeking to test, to destroy, to claim.
You must be ready. Fear rose in her throat, but she did not turn away.
Instead, she looked at him, really looked, and saw not only the Alpha King, the ruler feared by all, but the man who believed in her when no one else had. It was a strange, dangerous warmth in her chest, one that both frightened and strengthened her. Bray. And then, before she could speak, a loud crash echoed through the halls. A messenger stumbled in, eyes wide with panic. Perhaps. Your Majesty, the northern borders, they are under attack. Operation. Creatures! Unnatural! Destroying everything! Kyle's expression hardened, sharp as steel. Gather the council. Prepare the defenses. Operation. And you. He turned to Leora, his eyes blazing gold. This is your trial.
Come with me.
Bury.
You will see the world that demands strength, and you will see what you must become.
Operation. Leora's heart pounded. This was no longer training. This was reality, harsh and unforgiving. But the ember within her flared. Operation. Fear still gripped her, but so did determination. She would not falter. Not now. Not when the Alpha King had seen what she could be. As they stepped into the night, storm clouds overhead and the distant glow of fires on the horizon, Leora felt the weight of destiny pressing down, heavy and relentless. And yet, for the first time, she did not feel powerless. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and demanding. But she was no longer alone. And as lightning illuminated the sky, casting sharp shadows across the battlements, Leora understood something profound. She had fallen once, exiled and broken, but now, claimed and guided, she had the chance to rise. The first battle, and the first true test of her strength, was about to begin. The northern winds carried smoke and ash as Leora followed Kael through the battlements. From the castle, the horizon was alive with chaos. Fires burned in scattered villages, and dark shapes moved unnaturally through the forests. Creatures, twisted and strange, far larger than any wolf or bear, their eyes glowing like embers. They tore through everything in their path, leaving destruction and terror behind. Leora's stomach knotted. She had seen danger in the training halls, in the magical exercises Kael had guided her through. But this was different. This was real. Lives were at stake, and the creatures did not wait for hesitation. Fear clutched at her chest, but she remembered Kael's words. Fear is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Stay close. Kael commanded. His golden eyes scanned the battlefield, calculating and sharp. Do not let fear rule you. Trust yourself, and trust the power within you. Leora nodded, her small hand brushing against the hilt of the short sword she carried. Though she had trained with it for weeks, this was the first time she would see it in battle. More than the sword, she felt the hum of magic beneath her skin, responding to the presence of the creatures, flickering like a distant flame. The first encounter came swiftly. A massive shadow lunged from the forest, claws slashing the air.
Leora froze, but Kael's voice cut through her panic. Focus!
Feel the flow around you, letting the rhythm of the magic guide her. Her hands glowed faintly as energy surged, creating a barrier that slowed the creature just enough for Kael to strike. He moved like lightning, his blade slicing through the night, and the creature fell with a shuddering roar. Leora's heart pounded. She had done it. She had protected herself. And for the first time, others. The fear remained, but now it was accompanied by a spark of exhilaration.
The battle pressed on.
Leora followed Kael's lead, learning to sense the patterns of the creatures, the way the air shifted before a strike, the subtle cues of their movement. Her magic responded more easily now, guided by instinct and growing confidence. Bird. She created shields, nudged creatures away, and in one terrifying moment channeled a surge of energy that hurled a creature back into the forest. The force left her breathless, but triumphant. Barah. Kale approached, his gaze assessing, yet softer than it had been before. "You are stronger than you realize," he said, almost quietly.
And this is only the beginning. Strength is not just survival. It is mastery of fear and doubt.
You are learning that quickly. Leora's hands trembled, still glowing faintly.
I think I can feel it now, she said. The magic...
Burn. It responds to me. Not perfectly, but... breaths. Yes. It will grow. Brave.
And it will test you, in ways you cannot yet imagine. You are awakening, Leora.
That is the path of power, and it is never gentle. As the night deepened, the battle slowed.
The creatures, fewer now, retreated into the darkness from which they came. Villagers emerged cautiously from hiding, eyes wide with fear and awe.
They looked at Leora, the small Omega who had helped turn the tide, and she felt the strange weight of recognition. For the first time she was seen not as weak, but as necessary. Yet even as relief settled briefly over the battlefield, Kale's voice drew her attention.
Follow me.
The threat is not over.
They moved toward the ruins of a northern outpost, one that had been devastated by the creatures.
Among the wreckage, Leora felt a cold tremor in the earth, a pulse of dark magic that sent chills down her spine. She reached out instinctively, and the energy answered her touch, sparking with an intensity that frightened her.
Do you feel it?
Kale asked, his hand brushed lightly over hers, grounding her.
This is what I warned you about. You are connected to forces far older and more dangerous than any creature in the forest.
You must learn control, or they will consume you. The ruins themselves seemed alive with whispers. Leora could feel the echo of ancient power, like the memory of old battles and old grief trapped in stone and soil. Her magic flared involuntarily, and she nearly collapsed from the intensity.
Kale caught her, steadying her with a strength that was both reassuring and commanding. "You will not break," he said firmly.
Not now, not ever. Fear and doubt are only part of the fire.
You must decide whether you will let them burn you or forge you. Leora took a deep breath, and with his guidance channeled the power.
The dark pulse in the ruins responded to her, settling, calming, bending to her will. She felt the surge of something long buried in her veins, something old and potent, something that connected her not only to the land but to the destiny Kale had promised. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. Leora's body ached, her mind swirled with new sensations. Yet she felt alive in a way she had never imagined. When she finally lowered her hands, the ruins were quiet, and the pulse of dark magic had retreated, leaving only echoes of the power she had faced and survived. Kale's gaze lingered on her, an unreadable mixture of pride and something else she could not name.
You are awakening, Leora, he said. And with each step, your bond with this power and with me will deepen.
But be warned, awakening is never gentle. There will be temptations, choices, and sacrifices. You must be ready to face them.
She nodded, exhausted but determined.
I will try.
I want to be ready.
Try is not enough, he said, his voice low and intense. You must commit. The power within you is a living thing. It will test your heart, your mind, and your spirit.
Fail, and it can destroy you, or those you care for. Succeed, and it can change everything.
Inspiration. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the northern horizon where the first light of dawn tinged the sky with pale gold. Leora's heart pounded with a mixture of fear, excitement, and something far deeper, a connection she could not yet name but felt in every pulse of her veins.
Kale, she whispered almost shyly.
Why? Why do you trust me? His golden eyes softened just slightly, and for the first time, Leora saw the weight he carried beneath his power. Because I have waited for someone who can awaken the fire within without fear of it. And because I see in you what no one else can. Not the council, not the warriors, not even the magic itself. You are more than the world believes. You are my Omega. And that bond is not given lightly. It is earned, and it is claimed. The word struck her like lightning. She had been banished, humiliated, seen as weak, and yet here was the Alpha King, claiming her not for status, not for tradition, but because he recognized something extraordinary within her. Something she had never dared to believe existed. Before she could respond, a cry rang out from the ruins below. A warning, sharp and urgent.
Kale's eyes narrowed. The threat is not gone.
The creatures, or what drives them, remain. And now, something stronger approaches. Leora's chest tightened. She felt the dark pulse returning, more intense than before. Her magic flared uncontrollably, reacting to the danger, and for the first time fear and power collided violently. She stumbled, nearly losing control, and Kale's hands were on her instantly, steadying, guiding. You must focus, he commanded. Do not let it control you. Control it! She took a deep breath, forcing her mind to calm, letting her hands guide the magic, feeling the flow instead of resisting it. Slowly the dark pulse began to bend, then yield, responding to her intention.
Her exhaustion was immense, yet the surge of triumph and understanding that followed was greater.
She had faced the fire within and not burned. Kale stepped back, watching her with that same golden intensity. Good. Very good. But this is only the beginning. You will face darker forces, harder tests, and choices that will demand everything from you. Leora, panting and trembling, realized something that both terrified and exhilarated her. She had already begun to change. The timid, fearful Omega she had been was gone, replaced by someone who had faced real danger and survived. And yet, she knew the path ahead would demand more. Much more.
Do you understand? Kale asked quietly.
I think I do, she said, her voice weak but determined. I must face it and control it. Kyle nodded, a rare softness touching his expression. Yes. And know this, I will not leave your side. But the trials you face, you must confront them, Leora. Alone, if necessary. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows over the northern lands, revealing the extent of the destruction and the challenges that still awaited. Leora's heart was heavy with fear, but it was tempered by a flame of determination. She had survived. Brr.
She had faced the awakening, and she had claimed, however fragile, a measure.
But as they looked toward the horizon, dark clouds swirled, more massive and menacing than before. The creatures, the forces, the destiny that awaited her, none of it would be simple, and none of it would wait for her to be ready. And the kingdom, the Alpha King, and her very soul were about to be tested beyond anything she had imagined. The northern skies were heavy with storm clouds, dark and low, as if the heavens themselves waited for the battle that approached. Leora stood atop the cliffs beside Kael, the Alpha King, the wind tugging at her cloak and the pulse of magic thrumming in her veins. The creatures that had terrorized the villages were no longer scattered shadows. They had grown, more organized, more dangerous, and something older seemed to guide them. Leora felt the weight of destiny pressing down, heavier than any stone, sharper than any blade. The magic within her flared at the anticipation, reacting to both the storm and the gathering darkness. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but this time, it did not root her to the ground. She had survived before, and she knew now that power was not something to be feared. It was something to wield with clarity and intent. Kael's golden eyes met hers. "Brr. Do you feel it?" he asked, his voice calm but commanding. "The force you sensed in the ruins, it has returned. Brr. Stronger, darker, Operation. But you are ready. Are you ready, Leora?" She drew a deep breath, letting the wind and the storm fill her senses. Operation.
I am,
She said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands.
I will face it.
I will not let it win.
Operation. He nodded, a faint shadow of a smile touching his lips, though his eyes remained serious. Good.
Remember, fear will come, doubt will linger, but both are tools. Use them. Operation.
Control them, and trust yourself, and your bond with me.
The ground trembled as the first of the creatures appeared, massive and grotesque, eyes glowing with unnatural light. Their movements were precise, as if guided by thought, and a chill ran down Leora's spine. She had faced them before, in smaller numbers, but now they came like a tide, a darkness that threatened to swallow everything in its path. Kael stepped forward, his presence commanding, his sword glowing faintly with ancient enchantments. "Follow my lead," he said. Operation. Use the magic within you. It will guide you. Operation. It is not only your shield, but your weapon. Leora nodded, closing her eyes for a brief moment to sense the energy around her. Operation. She let the magic flow through her, not forcing it, not resisting it, but allowing it to move as if it were a part of her heartbeat. When she opened her eyes, her hands glowed with a soft light, a barrier forming in front of the approaching darkness. The creatures lunged. Leora raised her hands, and the barrier flared, pushing the nearest forward with a force that left them staggering. Operation. She focused, her pulse matching the rhythm of her magic, feeling it surge, flow, and bend at her command. The creatures paused, as if sensing the power they could not touch. Operation. Kael moved like lightning, his sword striking with precision, his presence an anchor in the chaos. "Now!" he shouted. "Together!" Leora unleashed a wave of energy, guided by instinct and the teachings Kael had given her. It swept across the battlefield, knocking back the creatures, bending even their unnatural magic to her will. Operation. Fear and power, all at once, a storm within her that mirrored the one above. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Duration. The battle was relentless, but Leora held her ground. She learned to anticipate, to sense the flow of energy, to direct her magic not only defensively but offensively. She was no longer the fragile Omega cast out by her village. She was a force, a conduit of ancient power, tempered by fear and courage alike. Yet just as victory seemed within reach, a massive shadow descended from the clouds. A creature far larger than the others, with wings like night itself and eyes that burned with malice, landed before them. Its roar shook the cliffs and sent a shiver through Leora's spine. Duration darkened. "This is it," he said, his voice low and tense. "The source. You must face it. Duration. Alone, if necessary."
Leora's heart pounded, but she did not step back.
Duration had felt the pulse of power within her grow stronger with every trial. I will face it," she said, raising her hands as her magic flared brilliantly, a shield of light against the encroaching darkness. The creature lunged, and Leora moved with instinct, guiding her energy, bending it around the creature, deflecting its strikes, and striking back with pulses of force that made the earth tremble. Each movement was precise, each action a lesson she had learned from Kale.
Her exhaustion was immense, yet her determination was stronger. She could not fail.
Kale fought alongside her, his blade cutting a path through the lesser creatures, guiding and protecting. Yet he allowed her to face the greatest threat, watching her with a steady gaze, knowing she must claim this power fully to awaken completely. The battle raged, the storm above echoing the chaos below. Leora's magic surged, responding to every motion, every threat, every flicker of darkness. Duration. She felt fear, yes, but also exhilaration, clarity, and an unshakable certainty. This was her moment, her awakening. With a deep, steadying breath, she reached into herself, letting every doubt, every fear, every shadow within her transform into light. Duration. A brilliant surge erupted from her hands, a force that stretched across the battlefield, hitting the great creature with a power that shook the cliffs. The creature roared, staggering, and then fell, vanishing into a whisper of dark mist.
The lesser creatures, sensing the loss of their leader, fled into the night, leaving the battlefield quiet except for the wind and the pounding of Leora's heart. She sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted beyond measure, yet triumphant.
Duration. She had faced the darkness and survived. She had not only protected herself, but the kingdom. Kale approached, his golden eyes reflecting pride and something softer, almost warmth. Duration. He extended a hand to her and she took it, rising unsteadily. "You have done it," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Duration. You have awakened fully. You are no longer weak.
Duration. You are extraordinary. Tears pricked at Leora's eyes, not from fear or pain, but from a deep, overwhelming relief.
She had been cast out, humiliated, seen as weak, but now she understood her true strength. She had claimed it herself.
Kale's gaze softened further, and for the first time he allowed himself a rare smile.
You are mine, he said, not in possessiveness, but in recognition of the bond that had formed between them.
Not as the council would claim, but as a partner, a force, a mate who has proven herself. The words resonated through her, grounding her even as the adrenaline of battle faded. She had feared this bond, feared the claim, but now she understood it not as a limitation, but as a partnership built on trust, strength, and recognition. She began, but words failed her. How could she express what she felt? Gratitude, pride, awe, and something tender, stirring deep within her heart. She had been banished, believed weak, and yet here she stood, fully herself, acknowledged by the Alpha King, and no longer alone. Kyle's hand brushed hers gently.
You do not need words, he said. The bond is already understood.
We are connected as protector and partner, as Alpha and Omega. You are more than you know, and together we are stronger than the world would dare imagine.
They stood together on the cliffs overlooking the northern lands, still scarred by the fires of attack, yet illuminated by the first rays of dawn.
The kingdom was safe, for now, and Leora's trials had forged her into someone capable of both defending it and shaping its future.
The villagers would speak of her in hushed voices, not as the weak Omega they had condemned, but as a hero, a force that had changed the course of their world. He had faced exile, fear, and doubt, and emerged transformed, strong, and claimed by the one who had seen her potential from the very beginning. And as Kale's hand rested lightly over hers, Leora realized something profound. Power was not only about strength or magic. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to face the shadows within oneself. She had faced those shadows and had conquered them. The storm above began to break, revealing patches of blue sky and sunlight, casting golden light over the battlefield, the ruined villages, and the cliffs. It was a new day, a new beginning. Leora's journey of self-discovery and awakening was complete, but the bond she shared with Kale hinted at challenges and adventures yet to come. Together, they would face them. And, for the first time in her life, Leora felt whole, acknowledged, and powerful, not in the way the council had defined strength, but in a way that mattered. She had been banished, broken, and doubted. Yet she had claimed her power, her destiny, and her bond with the Alpha King. And now, standing beside Kale, the Alpha King who had recognized her worth before anyone else, she knew that she had truly risen.
The kingdom would remember this day, not only for the survival of the northern lands, but for the awakening of an Omega who had been cast out, yet returned stronger than anyone could have imagined.
The wind carried her laughter and Kale's quiet acknowledgement across the cliffs, a promise of hope, power, and unity. The darkness had come, tested them, and retreated. The light remained, and it shone brighter because Leora had chosen to embrace it. The trials were over, the awakening complete, and the Omega who had once been banished now stood fully claimed, fully powerful, and fully herself. The storm had passed, and the dawn belonged to Leora and Kale.